We're going to go to closed session. Thank you.
Why are you sitting over there?
Okay, that was easy. Putting up our regular session, Calexico City Council, Calexico Redevelopment Successor Agency, and Finance Authority. Call to order, please. Roll call.
Mayor Pacheco?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Escobar?
Here.
Councilmember Hodge?
Here.
Councilmember Babb?
Here.
Councilmember Hurtado?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Figueroa, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Right hand over your heart, ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Dale.
City of Calexico mission statement.
Together, we pledge to provide effective and efficient services in a courteous and respectful manner to improve the quality of life for all in our unique border community. Viva Calexico.
Remain standing, please, for an invocation by Father Jose Sosa, leading well in the church.
From the Gospel according to Matthew, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself." The Gospel of the Lord. We give you thanks, Lord, for the gift of life. You have called us to follow your path of service. We give you thanks for the elected and re-elected leaders of this country. Pour out your Holy Spirit upon them, that they can serve you with their great love. Send upon us your spirit of wisdom and understanding. Help us always to serve you through this community of faith and love. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Father. What do we have next? The closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council meeting closed session on the two items described on today's agenda. We did receive direction, but no reportable actions were taken. Thank you.
City Clerk.
So moved.
Second. So move. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on the City of Calexico website at www.calexico.ca.gov the Friday following the City Council meeting. Mayor Pacheco will have community office hours to hear concerns of the citizens the fourth Tuesday of the month from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at City Hall in the City Manager's Conference Room, 608 Heber Avenue, Calexico.
Public comments?
Presentation.
3-minute public comments?
Oh, okay.
Let me see mine.
This is the time for the public to address the City Council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name and place of residence for the record. While members of the public are encouraged to participate, it is unlawful to disturb or delay the City Council meeting with personal or slanderous remarks. If the item you wish to comment on is on a consent item, please comment now.
Okay.
The City Council is prohibited by state law from taking action or discussing items not included in the printed agenda. If the item you wish to comment on is on the public portion of the agenda, we will take your comment when we get to the item on the agenda. Please direct your questions and comments to the City Council.
But before that, we're going to do presentations. We've got Farm Workers Appreciation Week proclamation. You'd all take out your little sheet. Farm Workers Appreciation Week, December 2nd through December the 8th, 2018. Whereas agriculture has traditionally been the backbone of the economy of the Imperial Valley, and
Whereas the Imperial Valley farm workers have tilled the soils, sowed the seed, and harvested the crops of this rich agricultural area, and whereas these workers and the agriculture industry has provided food in abundance for the people in the cities, the nation, and the world, have this contributed greatly to the economy of Calexico and the Imperial Valley, and
Whereas the Calexico City Council recognizes the contribution which these migratory workers and the agriculture industry have made to our community, and
Whereas the Calexico City Council believes in the dignity of tilling the soil and tending the crops, and
Whereas the Calexico City Council recognizes agriculture will continue to play a strong role in our community's economy, and
now therefore be it resolved, I, Louis Pacheco, Mayor of the City of Calexico, on behalf of the Calexico City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of December 2nd, 2018 through December the 8th, 2018, Farm Worker Appreciation Week. Mayor Pacheco, in witness whereof, I hereunto affix my signature and the official seal of the City of Calexico on the 7th day of November 2018. And we have somebody, Ms. Elvira Naya.
Ah.
We have a big day that day, no? Me too. You want to kind of brief the folks on to that day?
Thank you, Mayor Pacheco, and council members. My name is Elvira Anaya, and I am the Director of Center for Employment Training. I'm also the Chair of the Farm Worker Services Coalition of Imperial County. And I'm here to invite the council members and the Calexico community to help us celebrate and share in our appreciation for our local farm workers. This year marks the 39th Annual Farm Worker Appreciation Breakfast. It will be held on Friday, December 7th at 1 a.m. at the America's Job Center, Calexico, the One Stop, right in the parking lot. We will be serving over 2,500 farm workers a nice breakfast of tamales, beans, pan dulce, coffee, and a bunch of goodies. We'll have music and dancing and participation and a nice holiday celebration for just as a small token of our appreciation for those hardworking farm workers that put food on all our tables. So thank you, City of Calexico, for
Tamales?
Tamales.
That's what I was waiting to hear. Tamales.
Tamales. So
Okay.
they get a nice start to the holidays on that morning. So thank you all.
Thank you. We'll be joining you, I'm sure. We're going to skip item 4. They'll be here at the following city manager meeting. City Council. Presentation by Customs and Border Protection regarding migrant caravan. Tag team. Mr. Kim, welcome. Oh, there you go, okay.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members from the City of Calexico. My name is Gloria Chavez. I am the Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol here for the El Centro sector, based out of Imperial, California. In my short time here, since April, we have been quite busy with building and staffing and doing the job that we do on this border. I didn't want too much time to pass before coming before you and the community to brief you on some of the things that we are preparing for now that there is a lot of information out there on social media about this migrant caravan that has been organized and has started from the country of Honduras. The latest information that we have is that the first group, and I say the first group because now we have 5 groups that we are monitoring in their trajectory. The first group has arrived in Mexico City as of yesterday, and they are camped out in a stadium in Mexico City. Organizations are there treating them. Many of them are sick, some of them are suffering from blisters on their feet, etc., and are being fed by several organizations. We don't expect them to be there very long, maybe 3 days, maybe 5, and then they continue their trek on their journey. For us at CBP, we have been monitoring their status now for a while. Traditionally, and if Dave, we can go to slide 1. Traditionally, we have seen many of the Central American migration gravitate to the Texas border, the Texas-Mexico border. Rarely do they trek all the way out, as you can see, pretty far out here to the California border. However, in this case, this organization, Caravan, has stated that their intent is to come to Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico, at the San Diego border. My interest here is very concerning because if their intent is to get to Tijuana, they have to come through Mexicali. So then if they come through Mexicali, we have to be prepared at our border to address any situation. Just to begin, give you a little bit of historical information with this caravan. The caravan got organized back on October 15th of 2018 in Honduras as it moved through Guatemala. The organizers, it did indicate they wanted to aim for the Tijuana, Baja California, Mexico region. It was an approximation of about 7,000 in the caravan. We calculate today through information shared by the government of Mexico, which we've been in great liaison with and have a great partnership with, that it's between 3,000 and 5,000 at this time. They have not fragmented significantly to show that different groups are headed to different directions. They're still together, as I mentioned, in Mexico City at this time. The caravan, as it entered from Guatemala into Mexico, was created with much violence and chaos. That is what we're concerned about. Next slide, David. Our concern is that it's not an orderly process that could happen here. It could turn violent, it could turn chaotic, and that is something that we do not want to see. We do not want that at our border. We are actually aiming for a very orderly process to be managed here at the ports of entry and between them. David Salazar is here as well with me, who wants to share with you also some of the preparations that we have been investing in already so that we're able to manage the flow of people when they get here.
Good afternoon. For you that don't know me, I'm the port director here at the Calexico Port of Entry and the Andrade Port of Entry. And I'd like to start off, that picture is a great picture because you see the mass of people. And what makes this unique about this caravan group is that we have several groups in a row. And that alone, maybe not, we could process probably along the southern border if it was spread out. But the problem is that what we've seen at the borders is some people not following the rules, not following the border entrance procedure, breaking fences, throwing rocks, those type of incidents. So that's the concern. If that type of behavior comes to our border, then we have to be prepared. What we're expecting, though, is an orderly fashion here at the Port of Entry. We're expecting people that need help and are going to apply for asylum, and then we're able to process them one by one as they get to the border. And that's the goal, and that's what we hope happens. That's the messaging we're sending out. Come to the Port of Entry, not necessarily Calexico, but to a Port of Entry and apply for asylum. So the Office of Field Operations, U.S. Border Patrol, Air and Marine Operations are making preparations in the event that the migrant caravan comes to our area, to Mexicali and the Imperial Valley. All CBP in the Imperial Valley has assessed its capabilities. So when I say that, our tactical units have looked at all the vulnerable points that we have along the border at the Port of Entry, and we're shoring those up. We're working with DoD partners on that process as well. We're prepared to ensure minimum impact to the residents and visitors of the Imperial Valley. We understand, I'm a local Valley guy. I understand this is an economic engine. We do not want to shut this border. So the goal is to keep it running and using all the resources that we can do to make that happen. Of course, I don't have a say on what happens when the caravan gets here. We're just hoping it's orderly. CBP is focused on minimizing disruption to legitimate travel and trade and addressing public safety concerns. CBP in Imperial Valley has a tiered plan. Border Patrol has a tiered plan. They're in sync, and we're ready to address on the different stages of the process. Is there going to be an escalation? We'll go to a next tier. So we have preparations for several tiers. So we also, like the chief said, we also have triggers along the route that we're looking at, which way are they going to go and how is CBP going to respond. So we're looking at that. We're leveraging all our strategic partners here on the U.S. side, law enforcement on the U.S. side as well, and on the Mexican side. So like Chief Chavez said, we have great cooperation with the Mexican counterparts in Mexicali here. It's a really good cooperation. You have heard about queue management on our border. So we're not stopping people from coming into the Board of Entry. We're not saying you can't claim asylum. We're just saying get in line and we'll process you as our resources allow us. Now, if we have to move our resources left and right to deal with a threat, that could affect some of the processing and could slow it down. So we're hoping that doesn't happen. When and if updates or significant changes happen, our goal here is to keep the community informed. Likewise, we hope that you do the same thing, because the eyes and ears of everybody in the community is what helps us to do our job. The community can check and follow us on Twitter. I said it tweeter the other day, so I'm still laughing at that, but Twitter, my son gave me a hard time. It's an account for general news and specific caravan-related updates at CBP El Centro Twitter. I think recently they said there was some kind of fake news going out there saying the border was gonna shut as we prepared for the process. That was fake. And if you follow the account, you'll see that that was fake. Our intention is to handle anyone from the migrant caravan that comes into Imperial Valley in a professional and respectful way within the construct of our laws, while minimizing any negative impacts to our community. So we've thought about this a lot. We've learned from the Haitian caravan that came here before. We've beefed up everything from our medical, readiness to preparations for protest and everything along with that. So,
you're not
with that,
expecting any federal assistance through National Guard or?
yes. Well, we're working with the DOD, and their job isn't to come here and enforce on the border. What they're doing is they're going to assist CBP with infrastructure and shoring up vulnerable points, and also help with strategic planning. Did I miss anything, Chief?
The transportation as well. We have been, and we actually have a contingent of Marines on the ground already. They're here at the Navy base, and they've been helping us assess and do some assessments along different spots along the border, primarily the port of entry, because that is our concern. We want to keep the ports open. We want them to continue with the commerce, travel, and trade, but there are some vulnerabilities. So what they're doing is in support of logistics, like more wire or barriers or things that might be needed in case there's a heavy push to come through. The other for us is the logistical part of strengthening the workforce. If for some reason, let's say a group of this size enters right here through our port and is very aggressive to push through, we are going to need officers and agents in high numbers to get here as quickly as possible. So the Department of Defense is facilitating transport via helicopter of more than 30 to 50 officers and agents from maybe San Diego or Arizona to come in quickly to assist if needed. We have made preparations already, as Port Director Salazar has mentioned, to kind of maximize our strength between us in a tiered approach. If this happens, then so many Border Patrol agents will shift from between the ports. They'll shift to assist the port of entry here. If something else happens, we bring in our special ops people to come in and beef up the force. We're gonna keep doing what we can within our own community, but if it gets a little bit out of control, we're gonna have to lean on other areas to come in to help us. So the plan is there, it's in place, and some of the things that we're monitoring very carefully.
Mayor? Well, first of all, thank you, Chief Chavez, and not Chief, but Port Director Salazar. I just have two questions. One, obviously we all know for the last year or two, I'm not call it the wall, the new fence is being built. So is there still some porous points where, this caravan could possibly try and just hit those porous areas? One, that's one, and two, obviously we're preparing for the worst, but we want the best out of the situation. Obviously the border wait time still might increase because of the lack of, I know personnel on CBP's side is kind of low. At least that's what I've heard. What do you guys are thinking as far as that?
So I'll answer the first one on the vulnerabilities. So there are some areas. We do have a border wall that's it's 2 miles right now because we're missing the 2.5 still, the 0.25 that we're working on. There's still some technologies that are coming to accompany that, as well as some other type of infrastructure. But aside from that 2 miles, there is an area in particular here that we get a lot of families. And the families, as you know, is a whole different type of population, right? It's not mostly criminal aliens. It's moms and kids, and it's dads and children.
Thank you.
And there's a particular area that many of these smuggling organizations utilize to guide them through, and that is the area where they cross. It's further to our west from the port of entry, and it's all day long. So then they go and they turn themselves in to Border Patrol agents. We take them, we transport them to the station, and we process them. This is where it takes a lot of our time and effort, because families are processed a little bit differently and treated a little bit differently, because there's a lot of requirements with detention when it comes to a family. For example, if it's a father and a child, let's say it's a little girl and a dad, and they're a legitimate family that came from Guatemala. In our facility, if a father and a little girl show up, and we, by rules and policy, we have to give them a cell by themselves. A cell can hold maybe, it varies, it could hold maybe 30 people. Well, that cell is now out of commission because it's holding a father and a little girl. And we have to follow those procedures and those policies. So then our capacity starts getting full really quick, because we don't have a lot of cells. We only have a minimal amount of cells for the El Centro Station or Calexico. But we anticipate that these Honduran caravan is going to have a lot of families. So that for us is a concern, because we have to prepare. We have to prepare for additional detention space, additional feeding, and additional transportation back and forth.
And I did see on your slide over here, up to 7,000. It's just up to 7,000 people, or could it be bigger?
It could
Do you
be
guys have
bigger.
an idea of? You guys don't have an idea of number-wise?
Well, there's a lot of numbers. I don't know if, David, if you have the latest, but there's a lot of numbers being thrown out there. We have about now 5 caravans, 5 different ones now, behind each other.
The one
that-
coming first would be about what size? Do you guys know?
About 3,000 to 5,000, I thought.
Most of these people are they're walking?
They're walking.
They're walking.
No, they're walking. Yeah.
But nowadays, I think from the latest information we received, many are using public transportation now. And it's sad, but they are being encouraged to load into tractor trailers in the back of semi-trucks, which it's a very dangerous situation as well. And they're finding ways to mobilize and move ahead of the caravan, of those that are walking. So transportation is being used as well.
Mr. Mayor.
So some of the vulnerable points that you mentioned, where could they be coming through? We've seen a big increase of illegal entries on our southbound lane since they put up the fence. So we've seen a lot of people running there. So you can imagine if people started to mass on the south side, that would be one entrance, the northbound and the southbound lane. So that would be a concern to us. Also, the New River area has a big opening right there if they get into the Mexican compound. So that's a concern. So that's areas that we're trying to shore out. Yes, as if we have to address a possible threat, we have to move resources, and yes, that does affect the wait time, yeah. But right now, I mean, the wait times have been going down. It's been a lot better. I know we have some lanes shut on the right, but because of the construction going on, but it seems to be flowing pretty good. We have about close to a little, I'd say in between 850 or less in our pipeline ready for lie detector tests. So that's where we're waiting for, and so we're going to get a big influx within the next year and a half. We should see numbers pick up a lot. That'll help with our wait times.
I just want to make a comment for the community to understand that we do, actually, from the community to understand that we do appreciate the reassurances that your both agencies are doing today, because just what we were talking about right now before this meeting started is that the relationships that Calexico, Imperial County have with our local Border Patrol, CBP agencies is a very good working relationship. I've had that relationship with you for a really long time, almost 30 years, and to know that we are in a Latino community, it's very important for us to know that you are compassionate, that you are explaining to the citizens and taking the time to come here, because this is it's a humanitarian issue. But we don't need fear-mongering either. We live very peacefully in this area. So I think that that's probably what we're all trying to do, is just to make sure that we all live peaceful lives, but address these types of issues that come from the outside and be prepared as you always have been. So I said what I said to you earlier because it is true. We do really appreciate your working relationship with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, yes. I do personally appreciate your service. And my first concern is our citizens and your well-being. I don't want this to get political, but, you know, our president said something that, to me, I thought, in my opinion, was very inflammatory about rocks versus bullets. But could you tell me on a practical basis, on a safety basis, what's the proper protocol if some young teenager starts throwing rocks?
Well, just like you said at the beginning of the statement, life is a big concern. So if the safety of the life is in danger of one of our citizens or ourselves, then we have to react. So that's the part of, we do understand there's kids, and we do understand that there's people that just are distracting by throwing rocks. So there's a difference. Is it really threatening our life? So that's what we look at. We have to rationally look at both sides of it. And that's what the Border Patrol does every day on the line. So
And that's where your training comes in and expertise.
Definitely.
Yeah, very
And there's
good.
some really well-trained people. I mean, I think since I started the academy 24 years ago until what I see today when I walk through that academy, what they're learning today is way better than what we had at the beginning.
Very good. Well, thank you.
And I just wanted to add one point, you know, so in this caravan, for your awareness as well, because it's information we've been receiving, it's not only migrants in the caravan. We have a lot of criminals in the caravan already that are mixed in. We have some great, again, the partnerships we're having with Mexico is fantastic, and the information that Mexico is sharing with us, it's extraordinary. To give us the information on some of these individuals, people will take advantage of that. They will take advantage of caravans like this to try and do that. The typical migrant family that is migrating north is not going to be taking any aggression against Border Patrol agents or CBP officers, but the criminals will, because they don't want to get caught again. So therefore, I've instructed my agents, proceed cautiously. We are going to treat people with respect and with dignity. We are going to be professional. But if your life becomes is threatened and is placed in danger, you will take action. Adequate actions to defend yourself or defend the life of someone else, because we will not tolerate that. So I've given them very, very clear instructions. And one of the things that we are investing in is ensuring that they are aware, that they are culturally aware of the circumstances that they're about to face if this caravan does show up at our border. Cultural awareness is very important, and that is something that I want our agents to understand exactly the type of people that they will be dealing with. So we'll continue to proceed in that manner.
Just to add one more thing is, in the recent years, you've seen CBP add additional equipment on their belt. So there's a lot of non-lethal gear that we have now, and so that training is a lot different than there's other equipment before the gun.
Good.
Mr. Salazar, the processing of the applications, are they being handled in the old building? Because now that you've moved over to the new facility.
Yeah, so the hub for Calexico and Andrade is still the old pedestrian building area.
Okay, on First Street.
Yeah, that's where we do all our.
So if any applicants are going to apply for those benefits, then they're going to be in those offices?
They're
hanging around
They're
there.
gonna be there. They may move from other ports to there, but they're gonna end up there. Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing and coming in and updating us on what's happening, and this is what's happening, and thank you for being very upfront and informative.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
It's good to see you, Mr. Kim. You're part of our family, sir.
Cosmont Transaction Services, Dan Masiello, structure and purposes of a water and wastewater bond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Pacheco, members of the City Council, city staff, and citizens of Calexico. My name is Dan Masiello. I am a Senior Vice President at Cosmont Transaction Services, and we are the city's municipal financial advisor. I'm pleased to be here with you again in the city tonight to give the council a brief overview of what we've been working on regarding the finances of the water and wastewater systems. Because the agenda for the November 28th meeting is shaping up to be a very busy night, Mr. Dale thought it might be helpful if I were to come here tonight and give a brief presentation about some of the items that we'll be presenting to the City Council for consideration for action regarding the finances of the water and wastewater systems. So as the presentation is booted up, I'll just begin kind of describing what our summary is that we've been working on. As this council is aware, the city's water and wastewater systems have significant infrastructure needs, and the city has an adopted and approved capital improvement program to address them. And they basically call for the following expenditures, which are about $18.7 million for the water system and about $38.8 million for the wastewater system, and we're still kind of working on those and getting final numbers. But those are the broad strokes of what has been discussed previously. The good news here is, among many items of good news, is that each system does have some built-up reserves that can help pay for part of the cost of these capital improvements. At the end of the last fiscal year of June 30, the water system had about $14.5 million in reserves, and the wastewater had about $20.6 million. You want me to come take a look at that, Debbie? Or? You need to do anything? Did I give you a bad stick? So the city recently received and approved a rate study from its rate consultants that proposed a way to fund the CIP and accommodate future operations and maintenance costs with only modest increases to the system's revenues of about 2% for each year over the next 5 years. An integral part of that plan to keep those revenue increase requirements or rate increases to 2% involves the issuance of some bonds to finance part of the capital improvement program. So this presentation will describe the analysis that we undertook to come up with the proposals that will be presented next week, at the end of the month, regarding both of the systems. So none of this is terribly important if it's on the screen yet or not, so I'll just keep going for now.
You're doing well.
Thank you, Councilmember Hodge. So how did we get here? The process we've done so far to date is, as the council is aware, might recall that there were some rate increases that were proposed of 4.5% to 5% for the next 5 years that were presented to this council last spring, and they were not enacted. And that was the initial approach at being able to fund the needs of the system, both operationally and capital going forward. So we at KTS analyzed, kind of in parallel with that, there was an opportunity to refund some water bonds that are outstanding, and we did an analysis and verified that there was a savings opportunity to refinance some outstanding water bonds, and at the same time looked at the overall CIP and analyzed that previous rate proposal and presented the findings that we came up with to the Economic Development and Finance Commission at the end of last summer in August. And the commission reviewed those findings and concluded that the refinancing of the 2007 water bonds, in combination with issuing some new bonds and spending down the reserves in a targeted way, should be pursued. So we've been working on that. So we got in touch and hooked up with the city's rate consultant, Will Dan, and provided some bond financing projections for them to use in their most recent rate study, which this council received and approved on October 3rd. So we have been working with a team of financing professionals and city staff to structure a financing package for the council's consideration that will implement the financing strategies that were contained in the rate study.
It works.
And it looks like just in
Your
time, we're on
stick
page
worked
4
after
now.
all.
So the objectives that have been guiding the process of what we've been working on were pretty straightforward, and we have discussed this with staff, obviously, and the commission as well. But to maintain, priority number one, maintain a top-notch water and wastewater system to adequately serve and protect the health and well-being of the citizens of Calexico. To that end, one of the goals and guiding objectives was to fully fund the CIPs and minimize the impact and severity of any needed revenue increases or rate increases. So it was also decided that we should one of the objectives was to strategically deploy and figure out how to deploy the accumulated reserves of each system to help pay the costs of these needed improvements, among other things, but not to deplete the reserves to a dangerous level. because healthy levels of reserves are needed to be maintained in order to ensure dependability and financial stability of each system as we go forward. And the target was decided that about 6 months of expenses, of operating expenses, would be a healthy number to keep in the bank and reserve. And so that's what we were using in our analyses. And another guiding principle was to spread the costs of the capital improvement program over time, which is a little more equitable to those who use the system. It seemed a little unfair to ask the ratepayers in the next, who will be here, the users of the next 3-4 years, to pay for major capital improvements that they might not use, they might not be around, they might not live in the city. And these improvements will be lasting for 40 years. And so as users come online and use the improvements, they would be paying for a share of the cost as well as you spread those costs over time. A little more equitable of an approach. So next page, please. So the results of the analysis, so the first will be the water system, and here's what we're going to propose coming in November 28th. The analyses performed to develop a comprehensive financial strategy for the water system have resulted in the following proposed actions, which will be presented to the City Council at the end of the month. So first step will be to redeem the 2007 water bonds. As I noted, that they're in the money for savings, but instead of refinancing them and selling new bonds to replace them, we're proposing that we actually use about $10 million from the water system's reserves to basically redeem most of them and pay off the loans. That will leave us still needing a little bit more money, so we'll issue a small refunding bond to redeem the balance of those bonds. And there's also some reserve funds available for use as well. And then to finance the capital improvement program for the water fund, to issue about $18 million, to issue bonds that will generate about $18 million in proceeds to spend on the capital improvements. What this will enable is setting up a level debt service structure going forward by refunding the bonds with reserves. So basically, this approach will achieve these results. As we project a fully funded CIP, the entire CIP will be paid for. The reserve levels will be at healthy. The reserves will be at healthy levels of about 6 months of operating expenses going forward. The bonds will be paid off in a level fashion where there's no higher debt service payments in the early years and then declining, which would have been the case if we actually refinanced those 2007 bonds directly. The operating budget going forward, as projected by Wildan, will provide adequate revenues to cover projected operating expenses, and all this while still being able to keep the rates at a 2% increase, hopefully less. So on the next page, we have some estimates of what the bond issue sources and uses would look like, as I mentioned. So a small refunding bond issue of around $1 million or so, and about a $16-17 million bond issue with some premiums in there. Now these are estimates; these are subject to change. These will be negotiated as we move forward if the council decides to approve moving forward at the end of the month. The next page shows the debt service that we're projecting to be paid out of the water system of about $1,125,000. The current water bonds that are outstanding pay about $971,000 a year in debt service, so this is a modest increase to what the current level of debt repayment is. But what this achieves is it keeps the same level of payment over the next 30 years going forward. Any questions so far? On to the wastewater system on the next page. So same thing, the analysis we performed to develop a comprehensive.
Sorry, can you go back to the last slide just to see the amortization rate?
Did you have a specific question, Mr. Real?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Now, I'll touch on this a little bit later, but these are based on current market rates. So the proposals that we're going to be developing and bringing before the council at the end of the month for the wastewater would be to use about $15 million of current wastewater system reserves to pay a portion of the CIP costs and to issue bonds to pay for about $22 million and change of CIP costs. And these achieve the exact same objectives that the entirety of the CIP as adopted will be fully paid for. The reserves of the systems are projected to remain at a 6-month level going forward and not be depleted below that. The bonds will be paid off in a level structure over the next 30 years. Oh, and I didn't mention this for the other system, but there will be a healthy level of debt service coverage, meaning that there'll be additional money left over after paying operation and maintenance costs to pay bonds, and that should set the city up to get a good interest rate. So we're seeing debt service coverage of both systems at the minimum of at least 1.3 times, but immediately increasing in the next few years after that to 1.5 to 1.75 are the projections.
As far as the market rates, what is the city's S&P right now basically
The
Standard
utility
& Poor's?
systems have a separate rating than the city's general fund.
Okay,
They
so
are
it's not based
separate.
on the city's Standard & Poor's,
City's general
credit.
fund has its own
Okay.
Standard & Poor's credit rating, and it's separate from the utilities, because the utilities are their own kind of self-contained operations. They act
but
like
they also
businesses.
have a Standard & Poor's
The
rating.
outstanding rating on the water system, there's no debt outstanding on the bonds. The water system's current bonds outstanding are rated A-. Now, the financial health of the systems, I personally feel that we should be in line for at least an upgrade to an A rating, underlying. And that
And
will,
would that be something to do possibly before you go
that will
out
be
to
part of the
bond?
bond issuance process. So if the council chooses to authorize the issuance of bonds at the end of the month, the transaction team, as a matter of fact, we're working right now to get meetings set up with Standard & Poor's to give a credit presentation about the systems and explain what the revenue base is and the customer base and the largest ratepayers and all that good stuff and what sort of covenants will be in the legal documents, and I'll get into that in a minute as well. And during that process, I'm going to say very loud and clear, these guys are at least an A. It's very hard to go up what's called a rating notch. So there's a rating category of A, and that's differentiated to A+, A, and A-, kind of going down the ladder. So right now it's a rating of an A-. It's hard to go 2 whole notches up. A- to A+ would be a big jump, and I wouldn't expect that to happen. Although the finances are in really good shape, and water system, utility systems are traditionally better credits than other types of financings because, frankly, you have a lot more control over those revenues if people don't pay. If there's delinquencies
218.
and you have to take action, people tend to pay
Yeah.
the water bills pretty quickly once there's an enforcement action. So,
Okay, thank you.
and that bodes well for credit ratings. So again, all this will be achieved and still keep rate increases at just 2%, which was proposed in the last, and the rate increase that was presented to the council on the 3rd, which there will be a public hearing for on the 28th. So on page 9 and 10 are also the projected sources and uses for the wastewater bond offering. These are all estimates based on current market rates. Current debt service estimates for this size borrowing, which is a little bit larger than the water, was about $1.3 million per year. And that produces projected debt service coverages of about 1.5 times. So for every dollar in bond debt service that needs to be paid after paying for system operations and maintenance, there's expected to be $1.50 available to pay that debt service. So that's a healthy number, and it will be received well by credit rating agencies. So just to kind of quickly go over what you'll be receiving in an agenda package so you're not totally overwhelmed, and for those of you who have seen bond issue approvals before, you'll be familiar with this. It tends to be a lot of documents, there's a lot of legal contracts, but these are the highlights of the main documents that will be involved. The Public Financing Authority and the City Council will be considering authorizations. There will be a installment purchase agreement between each agency, and well, I'll get into that in a second, but that's the 2 resolutions will each approve a water bond financing and a wastewater bond financing. There will be separate bond issues. They are separate utility operations. They have separate credit ratings, separate. They have to remain separate also for Prop 218 purposes. So we'll have 2 separate and distinct series of bonds. So there'll be 2 authorizing resolutions, one to be adopted by the City Council, one to be adopted or considered for adoption by the Public Financing Authority. So these resolutions will authorize the issuance of the bonds and wastewater bonds. Certain activities related thereto, such as the power to complete the documents and negotiate interest rates with the underwriter and things like that, will be delegated to city managers, city staff. And also approving these following legal documents, the forms of these legal documents. So the drafts of the contracts will be presented. There might be some fine tuning that's done as we go into the bond market, but they are standard form documents, and that's what my role will be, is to make sure that the city's getting a fair shake in the deals that it'll be entering into. So the first document would be the installment purchase agreement between the city and the Public Finance Authority for each system. And how this works is that in exchange for the city's promise to make annual installment purchase payments to the financing authority will go ahead and issue bonds to pay for and install the capital improvements that the city will be buying. So it's I don't want to call it a fiction exactly, it is literally making an installment purchase, but this is a mechanism that's used in order to effectuate a financing through the JPA, the Mark Shrews Bond Pooling Act. And the city won't literally pay the finance authority and the finance authority then make a bond. The city will just go ahead and pay the trustee. The finance authority will assign its right to receive these payments. But the next document will be the indenture of trust, which is basically where the contracts of the bond issue live and all the agreements and all the terms of the bond, such as their payment dates and redemption features and other covenants and promises that the city will be making, such as to make sure they charge adequate rates. There'll be a bond purchase agreement, which is the contract between the underwriter and the city, where the underwriter offers and agrees to pay for the buy and pay for the bonds under what terms, which will be negotiated on pricing day. And then there's, of course, what's called a preliminary official statement, and this is an offering document. This is where the potential investor will learn all it can about the city of Calexico and its utility systems, and information about the city and its demographics, information about the operation of each system. Lily Falomir was kind enough to give us a tour. I went and viewed the water and wastewater operations the other day myself. So we'll be building a story and telling the story to the investing public about why these are a good investment. And the law requires that we point out any potential risks that an investor might have, and so they can make an informed investment decision. So that's all going to be for consideration and review. So we're going to be trying to get you the agenda packet nice and early, because it's a lot of documents to go through. And so basically, in summary, all this is because we know that maintaining a first-class water treatment and distribution and wastewater collection and treatment systems are high priorities in the city of Calexico. And the financing package I just described is integral to the proposed new water and wastewater rate structures. In order for them to be successful and keep that 2% level, authorizing this approach to the financing is a big part of that. So authorizing these actions at the end of the month will facilitate the following, as I've mentioned already: pay for all the needed capital improvements, maintain healthy reserve levels, generate adequate revenues going forward to fund the operations and maintenance of the systems, and keep the revenue increase to just 2% as opposed to the 4.5% to 5% that was previously proposed. And as I mentioned, that these financial projections are based on current interest rates. And I don't have a crystal ball, but we are in what some would call an inflationary environment. Interest rates are heating up. Short-term rates have definitely gone up quickly. We're lucky that long-term rates, while they have moved up, haven't moved up as quickly. So we're right at a point in time where we'll be at a good place to enter the bond market. There's some technical factors working in the city's favor. Specifically, municipal bond issues have fallen way off over the last year, so there's a demand for municipal bonds. There's as much as 30% less of bond issues because of changes to the tax law, among other things. So people are interested in buying municipal bonds, and that should help drive the interest rates lower. So it's a good time to enter the bond market. So I know that was a lot. It's a little bit technical and it's conceptual, but we wanted to try and get some of this out of the way. So on the 28th, you're going to have a very long meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Escobar?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It's partially a question for you, and it's partially a question for both of you as well. We're looking at 18 plus on the water and 37 plus on the wastewater, correct? I'm sorry, take that back. We're looking at 18 plus on the water and 22 plus on the wastewater.
In terms of what we're projecting to borrow in new money.
New money bond financing for the city of Calexico.
Exactly.
Which totals 40 million.
Correct.
Okay, so okay, thank you for confirming that. I think given the magnitude of the infrastructure improvements and the amount of bond financing, 40 million is definitely not chump change, especially for the city of Calexico. I think it's important that we fully disclose from a project timetable and a project schedule, one, what are we going to be investing from a water department standpoint and from a wastewater department standpoint, what the time schedule is going to be for the next 5 years, and how much money will be allocated for each project within those 5 years. I think it's important to provide full disclosure. It'll provide clarity, and obviously it's important for us to do it as quickly as possible, given our entire nature of where we stand at this moment in time.
Yes, sir, Mr. Escobar, and I'd like to point out that these numbers and figures are taken directly from the city's adopted budget where the CIP is. But in terms of the adoption package, I'd be happy to make sure that when we come back on the 28th and discuss, we'll call out very specifically what those projects are and the anticipated expenditure.
I just think it's important from a full disclosure standpoint to understand where these 40 million will be invested and when, so that the public can hold us accountable as to, hey, you're asking us for 40 million, when are you going to invest it? And when the time comes, we can actually show them that we've invested it based on a project time schedule.
And you raised an interesting point that I didn't really point out specifically or call out, but unlike the previous rate proposal where there was large increases and just extra cash flowing into the agency, to finance projects by a bond issue really restricts and limits where that money can go. It has to be spent the way you say it, otherwise you're committing securities fraud, you'll be in violation of various state laws, unlike when there's just cash flow coming into the systems in general, that money can be spent in different ways, in any way that's legally available to the utility. And I'm not suggesting anything untoward would happen, but this is a further check, I think, to your point, that with bond financing, the money will be deployed, it must be deployed. And in that official statement I described, there will also be that list. These are the projects, this is what we're going to spend the money on, and how and why, and an estimate of what the schedule is. Of course, things change over time, and contractors might deliver late or something. So there's a little bit of flexibility, but in general, it's a pretty strict process that several layers of professionals have to review and sign off on, not starting first with the bond counsel, who has to agree and approve that these bonds are eligible for tax-exempt financing. We're talking about doing a tax-exempt bond deal. So there's a whole layer of regulations that govern how and when you spend bond proceeds on projects. So the projects have to be installed, the bond proceeds have to be expended, and in a certain way and in a certain time. So we'll be sure
And
to illustrate all
I understand where you're coming from, but it's important that we explain this to our community in layman's terms. Most people obviously aren't as versed as you are specifically on bond financing. You do this every day. For us, it's going to be something that we do once or twice in our lifetime.
Absolutely, and I will be sure that when we make the presentation at the end of the month, that we will include exactly that.
But Mr. Dale, you will have projected a 5-year plan for each department for sewer and water, what we plan to do. I think that's what Mr. Escobar was kind of hinting at. What is the aim and the goal for the 5 years, and what is that we're spending the money on?
Yeah, we already have an adopted capital improvement program, and this just follows exactly it's called the CIP, yes. And it's laid out year by year.
Again, it's just to make it clear and to combine, because we've been presented that. In fact, it's been presented a couple times already. But again, it's important to provide full disclosure to our community, make our community fully aware in layman's terms of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and obviously provide them a project timetable as to when we're going to be investing these funds.
Can't shine enough light on it, absolutely. We'll make sure that it's well broadcast.
Mr. Macielo, just thanking you. You're always, you're always up for the task, and Cosmon's going to deliver. So, I want to thank you for your hard work.
Thank you for your support.
All right.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hodge.
It was technical and conceptual, and this is not berating the public, the layman. I know they're sitting there and they're thinking, well, how much debt are we gonna get in for the city? Are we gonna go broke on this? Could you answer that to a certain extent in layman's terms?
I certainly can.
Layman's.
I think I like using this analogy. It's not exactly the same, but everybody's familiar with the concept of a home mortgage. Most people, when they buy their homes, they don't have the cash to pay for their home. So they decide what an affordable payment is out of their budget that still leaves them room for food and clothes and gas for the car. And so they decide what sort of house they can buy, what sort of loan they're going to qualify for, what sort of interest rates there are in the market. So major capital expenditures to be paid off over time is an American tradition. I don't mean to rah-rah for debt, but that's really why we are able to enjoy the level of infrastructure we have, even though a lot of it's falling apart. And obviously, as we know, the city is due for some upgrades, it's due for some improvements. So we're talking about a major capital investment to be paid off over time, much like you would pay off your home mortgage. So how do we know that we can afford it? We have the rate study that came out that the initial approach was, let's pay for it with cash, and let's pay for it with every income, every dollar of spare income we have, and let's take all the money we have out of the bank and leave nothing left and make sure we fund these improvements. And still, we got to increase everybody's rates by 5% a year for the next 5 years. So kind of re-examining that approach and saying, well, what if we did spend some of the reserves? There's a lot of reserves in the bank, so we've been saving money. So you save money for a rainy day, you save money for buying the improvements, for putting that extension on the house. Some things you don't have to borrow for. So there's going to be a significant amount of spending of the reserves that have been built up. So for the balance that there's not enough money to spend without going to an unhealthy level, we examine what could the city afford to borrow, and what were the needs of the city, and could they afford to borrow it? And when we fed those projections back into the rate model came out with the city can afford this level of payment and only have to increase its rates 2% per year for the next 5 years going forward, versus the 4 to 5% per year going forward. So I don't know if that quite answers your question. I'm trying to get there, but that was the approach, to kind of back into the number and understand what the city could afford. If there was a need to reduce the size of the capital budget or capital plan, that would have been the result. But it works out that the current rates that haven't gone up in 9 years or something, or 11 years.
12, I think.
It's been a while.
Yeah, and to be able to issue bonds we're lucky there's still a relatively low interest rate environment. So, if rates, were to double, this would be a different conversation we'd be having. There is an ability to finance this major capital improvement.
But using the housing analogy, we still have enough money for our food and for.
And you still have money in the bank in
months.
case of emergency, 6 months worth of expenses. That if all of a sudden everybody stopped paying their water bill, at the same time, you could still pay your bills for 6 months.
Very good. Thank you, Dan.
It's Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
All right,
for
my
your
pleasure.
hard work.
Thank you. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
It's true. Mr. Kim, you had a question before Mr. Grundy.
First of all, I'd like to have a copy of the PowerPoint at this time and the last meeting too. And second of all, I was informed that it was $18 million we're going to bond it. Now it became a $40 million bond, which is cost of the city of Calexico close to the $90 million debt payments we have to deal with it. And the sad things, we have to hire the consultant to hire the consultant. Our practice in recently getting more hires consultant to consultant and consultant. It looks like we have several consultants named as a city manager too. And our staff's job, the consultant doing it. Or we contract out our job to somebody else's. So we don't have money, but we have money to contract out. Please, council members, your duty, fiduciary duty to our community, keep in the balance and serve the community. And the funny thing is the PowerPoint, they don't have number to readable. I believe nobody couldn't read one number, what payments there, and nobody couldn't read. I'm the only one blind. It's something kind of fishy to intentionally to not showing up. Where is our transparency? Always they say the transparency when they running for the council is not there neither. And unfortunately, I feel like we are dumb cities. People from outsiders, they treat us like a dumb. They can squeezing us as much as they can, and our council is accepting. It's a humiliating presentation today. And they believe they can squeeze us, our cities as much as they want. Besides that, I was mentioning several times our council members, we have money of $41 billion in cash, actually bank about $39 million, and they don't want to know what's going on there. And we are the one who's dumb city for the outsiders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim.
I would like to, Mayor, I would just like to say that for the sake of transparency, Mr. Kim, along with anybody, is invited to the Finance Commission meetings to ask these questions and go in more depth. I think than to come up here where nobody's prepared to give him any numbers, and And I think this is transparent. It's up here on a, on a PowerPoint, and I saw the numbers. Maybe we can get you a copy, but I mean, it's very simple. We're bonding because, and yeah, when you bond, you pay more than double when you have to pay it back. That's the way a loan works. But this is infrastructure that's needed now, not 30 years from now, and unfortunately, it wasn't done when it was supposed to be done, and that's why we're here. That's just a grim
Facts.
reality. Yep. So that's it.
Public comments, Mr. Grundy?
Mr. Grundy?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Tom Grundy. I just want to put a face with the name. Here about a week or so ago, I sent you guys an email. I hope you had the opportunity to read it. And I thank you for those that have got in touch back with me on that. I am the current president of the Imperial County Farm Bureau. And my email, what it was about basically was some water issues, and then a kind of a resolution that was presented to you and to support an amicus brief. And on any water issues, as we enter into another year of drought, we're going on over 14 years, we've got tremendous pressure from the outside communities to take our resource. This is something that our forefathers fought very hard for started out in the mid 1800s, 1850, 1860, to establish what is called a present perfected right. That is one of the strongest water rights on the Colorado River, and it is pertinent to the lands. I don't know if many of you here remember back in, dating myself a little bit, but 78, 79, there was a tremendous battle in the valley. It was billed as the 160-acre limitation. It was the Bryant versus Yellen law case. And it went all the way to the federal Supreme Court. And the Imperial Irrigation District was a supporter of the landowners of the Imperial County. So they intervened in that case. It was finally ruled in favor of the landowners, and what it basically said is the water is pertinent to the ground. Now, that just means it's attached to the ground, which is really important, like anything. If it's attached, nobody can take it away. So if they sell the land, the water goes with the land. So we can't transfer it out of the valley. So I'm not here really to talk about anything other than I grew up here in Calexico. I still farm here in Calexico. My mother just lives right down the street. We've been involved in this community at least my whole life. And I want to just tell you I'm of service. If you guys want to meet with me, I've been on the Water Conservation Advisory Board for well over 20 years. I'm a member of the IVH2O, which is a water users and landowners group, and their sole purpose is to protect that resource. And now, with pressures that are happening throughout, you've got an issue that's called drought contingency. And that's a plan that's throughout all the western United States, because the Colorado River is short. We're in drought. And so how are we going to continue to get our resource? Remember, we have a present perfected right. We have the most senior water right on the river. And so we do not need in any way, shape, or form to jeopardize that right or start piecemealing it out. Again, no scare tactics or anything. I just want you guys to be up to speed. I want to offer myself as assistance. I'd like some of the other members that are on these boards that I participate in, that they will go to their home communities and do the same thing. There's not a lot of representation to the cities to bring them up to speed. We just kind of, when you guys are elected, any elected official, what we do as a voter is we put our trust in the elected officials. And I hear it here, I read it in the paper about, some don't trust. Some thinks that funny business goes on. But we trust. We trust our board of supervisors, we trust our IID directors to make the best decisions, and they are. But if you guys are informed, you can help in that process now. Earlier, we had the farm workers breakfast, which you guys gave a resolution to support. The groups that I'm involved with have supported that farm workers breakfast since its inception. And personally, we've helped participate in that. And you made the comment that you understand the tilling of the ground and the importance of it. And that really is the backbone of this community. There will be development as long as we can keep the resources here so we can develop. To have those resources, which is water. That's where they'll come. There's abundance of land, abundance of water. The farmers of the Imperial County support development. We want our kids to come here and come back and have a place to work, and that will pay a wage that will sustain themselves, excuse me. And your kids, the same. So this is becoming more and more of an issue. There's movement of cities throughout the western United States planning to try to get their portion of water, and we've got ours. We have a tremendous perfected right. So every move that we make must be an informed move, and that's what I ask you. When somebody comes and asks you to support a water issue one way or another, inform yourself. It doesn't matter whose side you take, but as long as it's one that is, you have information, you're educated, and not because maybe somebody else has decided to go that way, so if they did it, we might as well too. Okay. We have a great IID board of directors, we have a great community, and we need to support that. And there are lawsuits going on. No doubt, there's always going to be differences in people, with their opinions and interpretations. So I'm here just to help you guys out if I can. If you need to meet on a regular basis, I was in 2 meetings yesterday on water issues that are arising continually. And so it's pretty important. There's a lot of challenges that face us here. Okay.
Well, thank you for sharing. Any questions from Mr. Brindy?
I'll comment something. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to make a comment.
Sure.
I did pay quite a bit of attention to what was happening with all of that. I find it very interesting now that I'm into the health clinic and what's happening to Salton Sea, and everything having to do with water is very interesting in the valley. And you were very nice in saying that IID has great members, and that may be true. But I did watch quite a bit of even fear-mongering in these recent campaigns for IID, and I didn't appreciate that as a voter, because I want to be informed, and I didn't want to allow for just these individuals that were campaigning to tell me their side, because I saw that there was a boogeyman somewhere in all of this. And so I think it's really important what you're saying. We all need to be educated with neutral information, not from information that comes from politicians, to be honest with you, because that was not helpful to the community. It caused quite a bit of confusion in myself trying to keep up what was happening and what was being said, and who exactly was the boogeyman to fear in all of this. And so the citizens end up with the short end of the stick when it's like that. So thank you for doing that. It's so important for you, especially for Calexico, where the agricultural community is so important for us as well, to come out here and provide this kind of neutral or another version and perspective of what it is that we have to pay attention to. So thank you for caring.
Well, thank you for your time, and maybe I'd like to really bring some people in and on a regular basis, just inform you guys, because we're getting challenged, and our valley has a lot to offer, and so it is an ag community, and this separation that is trying to be driven that farmers are bad or this or that. Farmers have always been here to help the community. Always. I mean, a few years ago, and you guys can do your homework on this, and I chuckle because the water rates to the city were quadrupled, okay? And so the reason being is they claim that there was more cost to deliver the water to the cities than it does to the ag lands. And what they also did at the same time is stop delivering or stop providing water to the schools and the churches of all the communities of Imperial County. Parks that had access to the canal water throughout all of the county parks, that water was all free. So who paid for it? It was the ratepayers. So that what the city paid, but that's 2% of the total amount of water that comes into this valley. The remaining 98% of the ratepayers were the farmers. They were not on board with having that changed. So it was petitioned a few years later, after some of the members had left the board, to bring the rate back down to the same rate that the ag users use, or the farmers use, so you guys pay the same rate as the ag. But we weren't able to get the churches and schools that water provided back for free. But at least we achieved. We're one community. And so again, that may have happened. I mean, I know most of you, well, I know all of you were not on the board at that time when that took place. But just little things like that shows, I mean, we're an ag community and we're one, and we have to stand as one, because we will fail if we get divided. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for taking time, Mr. Blundy, and sharing. And you did say go Bulldogs.
I did say go Bulldogs.
Okay, comments, City Council. Start over here, Mr. Real.
Just want to congratulate the close to new elected people, and tell everybody else that they're very brave. There's a lot of people that can criticize all they want, but it takes a lot to run and really actually try and want to make that difference. So congratulations to everybody, not just the people that won, but the people that fell a little short. And congratulate, I think, the people of Calexico. I think it was, I probably, aside from the presidential one, very good turnout. The boxes were full of absentees, and everyone was excited. I think it was a really good election, and that's about it. Next, we're going down the line.
Okay. Mr. Hodge?
Mr. Escobar,
I'm good, thank you.
you're good? I sit on this subcommittee. It's called RENA, which stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And it's through SCAG. And what it means is that we're going to have to analyze our housing needs and strategize our housing needs through their methodology and their process. and there's a due date. For RENA, it's October 2020, and after that, we're gonna have to, for the city of Calexico, update our housing element in the general plan. So this is something that will keep you informed about, and that's that on that. Tried to make it as short as possible. Looking through the agenda, all fine and dandy. I mean, everything here is necessary and relevant, but my complaint is, when I think about what the people's needs are, and this indirectly or directly impacts the people, a lot of the agenda items, but I just hope we get to a point where the agenda is part of downtown resolutions or ordinances or procedures that we're doing, or parks, or healthcare, or other areas that have that the public seems to have a real concern about. Those kinds of items very seldom appear on our agenda. And I would just like to make the comment that I'd like to see more of that. I know we're working on it, but I'd like to see more of it on the agenda. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
I believe there was, speaking of downtown, and I believe there was some preliminary renderings that did come out. That we got emailed that I thought were, it's very, very exciting. And I hope everybody got a chance to take a look at them, but they look nice. So I know that even though the wheels are turning slow, they're turning. That's good to see. So slowly.
Patience is a virtue.
I had a chance to go to the county recognition. Senator Wessel came down and honored some of the firefighters that were working on the Mendocino fires, and we had one individual that was there for 6 weeks, and we were there for that. We welcomed San Diego State new president at a luncheon. Mr. Figueroa and I had time to chat with her. I had a meeting with the ICTC, and hopefully this, well, it did pass. We said no to Prop 6, so
Excellent.
So we're going to get funding there and get our county roads, our bridges, and our streets, and our infrastructure. Money's going to be there for us, for the county and the cities. Went with the chamber. The chamber was discussing again the possibility of getting involved with the bid again, because the bid is not working much and not doing much for themselves. And I don't know if Mr. Figueroa, you were trying to extend your opening up your committee to allow them to come and be part of your group. So I don't know if that's still on board. They were talking about issues with the bid, and let's be more proactive. I don't know if they had a chance to talk to you, but.
So, yes, actually, that was the case, and I do want to point out, and I commend Councilman Hodge for raising the points regarding the downtown, and Councilman Real for acknowledging the information that we provided to the City Council in terms of the progress that we're doing. As staff, not only Mr. Dale and myself, but the representatives from the departments that are here today, we're working in unison to make this happen. So in addition to that, there is the best interest, I think, on both ends, the chamber and the city administration, to become a productive partnership. There is actually one member of the Calexico Chamber that has spoken and has been very active in providing alternatives that we can look into at a regional level to make sure that we can begin to implement some new practices here locally. So there are some steps that are being taken to make sure that that gap shortens and the collaboration grows.
And last was we had an opportunity to meet with county personnel, met with Mr. Dale and myself, and we had a nice 1-hour visit about possibility of helping and coming down and energizing our downtown and our mixed-used section of the city. So we're going to be working with them together to see if we can come up with a plan to help modernize our downtown. Mr. Dale, anything for the good of the order?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, sometimes these agenda items are like planting, you plant seeds, and by the time we bring them to the agenda, they need to be full-grown trees with apples that you can pick off. So they have their timing, and this downtown issue, we do have a draft action plan, but we don't want to bring it to council until we bring it to downtown owners and get some buy-in first. So we don't want to just bring it, haphazardly to the council. We need buy-in from our community first. So, but these things are definitely on our radar to get these things done. We're working on Cordova Park. I think we have the design plans already. So we're looking at some funding options there. So, any other questions for myself?
All right, thank you.
Okay. One other item.
I have one item that I want to report on. One of the things that we've heard from the community, and especially through this election, that's a huge need for the city, and something that we've emphasized over the course of the past months is making sure that we do our due diligence in reaching out and looking for the opportunities that are out there in the state of California, specifically in Sacramento, where we can use programs to attract resources down here to address the needs that we have. I'm happy to share, I mean, we've talked about the benefits of now utilizing the Housing and Community Development Department to bring down and address some basic needs that our community need to receive from the city of Calexico. I do want to add another one to some of the things that I've shared with you, and that is that through the same department, HCD, there is the Mobile Home Park Rehab and Resident Ownership Program, for which we can go and apply for monies. One of the things that I want to emphasize is that I'm going to be going to the Housing Authority at their next regular meeting and providing a presentation on this, because this is an example of a collaborative effort that can occur between the Housing Authority and the City of Calexico, for which we can be co-applicants, bring down money. It benefits the Housing Authority, it benefits the City of Calexico to remediate and provide the improvements. Specifically, I'm thinking right on top of my head of 2 mobile parks here in the city. It's a very, very important program that we can access and bring down and provide some much needed assistance. So along the lines of what we've been talking about exploring opportunities, this is just another one that Mr. Dell and myself have been looking closely at, that we feel we're going to be very aggressive in terms of making sure that we go after those resources. On another note, on the second item that I want to report is on the Oktoberfest event that we had. I do want to show and share with the council and the community that we had a great turnout. Some of the faces in the audience that were here before and are still here attended. To be the first event, I want to say that it was extremely grateful to see the turnout of the community. We had 700 people show up to Crumit Park. We were able to not only get new sponsors to believe in investing in events that the city can put together. And as a matter of fact, along the lines of what we're talking about, we liked the process that we followed, the model that we put in place, and we want to reciprocate something in the month of April for downtown. Different concept, but to attract the community again and engage them into something. I look forward to collaborating and sharing more with the council and the community as 2019 comes around.
Thank you, Mr. Figueroa.
Kudos, it was very well organized. So.
Thank you.
It was great music, great food, good attendance, good beer. I know you had a couple issues in the last 48 hours that I tried to assist with. Unfortunately, we weren't able to hit the ball at the ballpark, but at the end of the day, the thinking outside the box, the creativity that you and the organizers of the event, you should be given a lot of credit for it, because again, you're thinking outside the box, and that's what Calexico needs. So, muchas felicidades.
Mr. Dale, they mentioned a farmer's market downtown. Remember that issue?
Yeah.
So maybe we can come up with something to hook them in and stay downtown and purchase and buy and hook them in. Okay, moving on, consent agenda.
Consent.
Is there a
I'll make an approval.
second?
Motion.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Discussion on potential items. Item 16, we're going to adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Calexico, California, to act as the lead agency for the CEQA process for the New River Improvement Project. Mr. Figueroa.
I do want to point out that through Senate Bill 859, the Regional Water Quality Control Board out of the Colorado River Basin out of Palm Desert got awarded $1.4 million to address Phase 1 of the New River Improvement Project. If we recall, Phase 1 is from the border all the way to the 2nd Street Bridge. And the purpose of the money was to bid out the project so we could begin to create a study that could be presented for future use that had to do with the development of the planning, of the environmental work and design documents that are required to do the improvements there. If we recall, there are three improvements that need to take place in that area. That's the trash screen, that's the pipe for rerouting the water that we're going to pump back into the Parkway project with clean water running through the Parkway project, and the pump back system. So Michael Baker International was selected as the business, in this case the consulting business, to provide this study. I'm happy to share that they concluded their study on October 31st. It was a very exhausting process, but I feel it was worth the time. We held meetings literally every Friday here at City Hall. Even those Fridays that we were closed, between Cali, PA, the California-Mexico Border Relations Council, the Border Patrol, the IID, the county, to make sure that we had this document ready. The reason that this is so important is because compared to previous years, we now have money. Right now we have money, so we want to make sure that as soon as these studies get completed, we can implement the improvement projects. So at this point, not only was a draft initial study completed, but also Michael Baker International did a draft mitigated negative declaration. Okay, for all of us that have to do with, exactly, Mr. Hodge, the CEQA requirements, this takes care of that. So in essence, by the City of Calexico taking the lead, there is not so much of a heavy lifting that we need to do on our end, because a lot of that work has been done already. It's more than anything, it's procedural, what we need to do. So this resolution that you have in front of you is pretty much asking for that. We did it already in 2010 when we had it undertake CEQA for the Parkway project, and we were able to get it done. This is so much easier compared to what we went through back in the day. So I do want to point that and be clear that this is not going to cost the city money. If anything, it's going to cost some of my time or Mr. Dell's time, but it's going to be minimal. So to that, I'll be happy to answer any comments or questions.
My only question is, as far as do you know of any other project similar in scale, similar in similar type of project that has been done that was, I guess my question is, it was done with a mitigated negative deck, and my question is that enough, or should we actually do a full EIR?
There is precedent for the Parkway project where a full EIR was done. So we've already identified in the vicinity some of the environmental matters, such, for example, back then we encountered an issue with the burrowing owl nest that was right where the outlets sit right now. That issue was addressed. Those are the little things that, for example, Fish and Wildlife look for. So again, learning from the first go-around, we've contacted the Environmental Army Corps of Engineers, the Army Corps of Engineers, I'm sorry. We've contacted Fish and Wildlife, and we've engaged them early on in the process. So we believe that we are safe in doing a negative deck for this project.
And that is based on just us, city staff, or is there a consultant or our attorneys also concur to that?
Yes, but that again, I want to make emphasis. That's a great question. It's minimal. All of that work has been done already through the contract that expired on 10/31/18.
Okay.
Any other questions for
Other
Mr.
than that,
Figueroa?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Accept item 17, accept the award and bid from Milo Janitorial Services and authorize the city manager to execute a 2-year agreement with Milo Janitorial Services for the cleaning services of City Hall.
I move for
Make
its
a
approval.
motion. Oh,
Whoops.
sorry.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there, somebody made a motion?
Yeah, I made the motion
I'll second for
Discussion.
for discussion.
As far as, is there a reason why it's 2 years and not 1 and not 3, or, I mean,
I would refer to our HR manager, Ms. Denise Garcia, on this.
hi Denise.
Hello. Other than the fact that we couldn't really get people to come in and even look at the building, 2 years just seems reasonable. That way we don't have to go out again. And again, it's up to council. We can put it back out there for one. But the response from the services in the valley were, as you can see, this is what we got. And we went over and above what we would normally do for an RFP. We called, we emailed, we mailed, posted it everywhere we could think of, and still.
Okay.
Only
Do you believe
got
2
one.
years is fair?
I just recommend one, just for the simple fact that the time that it took for us to go through and do this and to be thorough. Yeah.
Okay.
And the contract does provide for 30-day notice of termination. To the extent you wanted to limit that before then, you could terminate it for any reason.
I'll make a motion. Well,
previous,
I second, so.
Okay, let's vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 18, authorize city manager to sign change order number 2 with Hazard Construction in the amount of $64,374.
No.
I have a speaker, Mayor.
Street improvement project, asphalt rubber composite layer overlay on designated streets, project number 2018-100. Mr. Dale.
I'd like to invite our Public Works Manager up to discuss this item, if I could.
She likes the spotlight anyways. Now make sure all the cameras are on Liliana. Follow me right now, please.
Well, good evening, Mayor and council members. Yes, the item before you is our second change order for our 2018 street improvement project. This change order, I promise, is the last, but for just the concrete. We had to add some additional curb, gutter, and sidewalk on Nosotros Street, as well as Grant and Mendoza. They were having some issues with water stagnant in front of the homes. So once we're out there, we wanted to try to see if we can level off and make sure we don't have those issues with drainage.
So the kids won't be able to swim there no more?
Right.
Really?
So this is something we forgot to put in.
I don't know if I...
Well, it's not that we forgot, but sometimes when we're out there doing our street improvements, we get calls of residents informing us of, you know what, this is the issue we're having. Can you please take care of it now that, you're out there doing the street? So we kind of, want to
Added it
add it in.
So no more kids swimming on the streets, basically, on Nosotros.
I feel like we're in Brooklyn
Are
when we
we?
do that.
Yeah, we might lose some votes.
Question?
So this is just for concrete work that we need to add to the project.
I know our existing pipeline from a water and wastewater standpoint in some areas that we're fixing is very dilapidated. And I believe Mr. Real has mentioned this in the past. We're spending millions of dollars repairing our streets, which are desperately needed. That'll pose the next question. I drive through, what is it? It's not Heber, but it is...
Rockwood?
Rockwood was paved all the way up to 5th Street, but then when you go into 4th, and I don't see it here, but that's a separate matter. The reason I'm bringing this up is, again, we're spending millions of dollars. Our pipes are broken, sometimes beyond repair. Every other meeting, we seem to be getting emergency services, and we quote it out, but when it's emergency, it's open season on the city and our budget. Granted, it's not hitting our general fund, I understand that, but at the end of the day, it's hitting our funds, our city funds. Could you elaborate on how potentially these measures from a water and wastewater standpoint will alleviate this matter, and if it's in our best interest to put a temporary hold on these improvements until we get the water and wastewater improvements? And the reason why I bring this up is you've got a beautifully paved new city street that you're going to carve up.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Councilman Escobar. And actually, we are being proactive. We're having, you as a council approved some water and sewer projects earlier, about a month ago, and we're starting to design on those. We're going to have those done before we do the overlay on those projects. Grant Street, we replaced the water pipelines there. So we're doing that before we, as you recommended. Now, there's another item coming up that's similar to that in this issue later on in the agenda, but we definitely agree with you on that.
And to piggyback what the city manager stated, actually this morning, our project inspector, our engineering tech, and myself drove about an hour and a half throughout Calexico because we're starting our 2019 street improvements. So we drafted a list, and what we're going to do is going to give it over to our water and sewer supervisors so they can go and check the water and sewer lines before we repave those streets. And if we have issues with water and sewer, then we're going to come back and do plans for improving the water and sewer.
Makes sense? Any other questions for Ms. Padawan?
Motion to approve?
I have speakers.
Second.
Mayor, I have a speaker on the item.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. All those in favor?
Aye. There was a speaker.
I didn't write down the speaker.
Oh.
I was write down the public comment you just passed to me. No. I just got it handed to me. Number 18 from Mr. Yun Kitty. Come on down. I have a public comment too. You just passed the fill out a sheet?
Yes, I filled it
Public
up.
comment?
Yes.
You spoke one.
No, I spoke number 6. I have number 6, I have what's called a public comment. So it looks like I'm the only one that had it, so I just ignored it. But you passed me a public
I
comment.
don't have a sheet. I'm sorry. Mr.
Yes, I had.
I thought he was speaking both at the same time.
Okay. Probably you misunderstanding on those matter procedures. So I doesn't make the noise. Just try to let you guys run. But this one I need to talk. First of all, I'm glad finally a council member was talking about the saving the money. I've been what's called deliberating these issues several times at council meeting. In finally trying to adapting to saving our money and saving the service together. And when I was mayor, I was directing to the city manager to do it into the same time, especially we have a rock route. We have a problem with the flood, anytime it rains. We should do taking care of the drains together. And also it's a condition of our cities, we have so much mud in the soil. So we should have a more short range of the drain, so that way the water staying in the top of the asphalt after rains. So our city street is not even after a certain time. They have a wiggling on the streets. And the other one is lots of complaint from the community. Our cities open the door street. Takes about 6-8 months to finish the job. There's something wrong there. They are very unhappy. They are mad. Why can we do like Kazakhstan did with the highways? We should do that. We should put together, organized, coordinating the different company. It looks like one company have a medium employee, they finish all the one side, and then when they finish it at one, they're starting another one. We should have them to, if they grab, if they need to do anything in the street, and then change the pipes or whatever we need to do it, and they're grabbing and just come for the street. Or if we have the sidewalk first, do the sidewalk first, street by street, we finish by. So that way, people, they're gonna be like 6 months, 8 months to open all the doors are going around it. They're really not happy with it. So we need to have more coordination to the job, to the right. Especially we need to consider community conventions, the convenience, and not companies' convenience. That is very big issues. I'm glad the council bring the issues about the pipes and drains. Those things we need to be taken care of together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Need a vote on that?
We voted already.
We voted on it.
Already.
Thank
Aye.
you. Item 19, Memorandum of Understanding by and between the City of Calexico and the Imperial Community College School District.
Motion for its approval?
Is there a second?
Second.
Item 19, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 20, appointment by Mr. Pacheco, Mayor,
That's used.
for the IV Continuum of Care Council. I'd like to nominate Mr. Ricardo Ortega.
The continuum of care is with regard to the homeless, is that correct?
Homeless issues, so
And
there.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I do just want to make an important statement that council and the community should know. As part of all these grant opportunities that we're going after right now, one of the requirements that we're seeing in all of them is that the city have a representative in this continuum council. So the importance of it resonates to the point to our availability to get monies from the state for different programs.
Thank you, Mr. Figueroa.
Thanks.
So, yes, we'd like to have that gentleman be on that committee. Item 21, we have Mr. Kim. Public comment, Mr. Kim, 21.
My first question is, we, City of Calexico, with dealing with the AE consulting, and several times we've been approving this, and why have to be come up every time to dealing with this consulting company? This expensive project has been approved a long time ago already, and they're still coming in. This is my question. Is why we have to keep hiring this consulting company with the same project. We already had approved the airport expansion projects approved this consultant.
I believe the questions, when it's a public comment, you can't answer questions, correct?
I think we can probably address that question. It's,
Mr. Dale?
I'm gonna defer to our expert here on that one.
Ms. Falomir?
Yes, Mr. Kim is correct in a way. This item has been brought to you before, but to request funding. We did the federal funding. We brought it in to help us apply for the federal funding, which we have already been granted the money. Now this is the process of getting the consultant. Every 5 years, the Federal Aviation Administration requires that we do a request for a statement of qualifications. So we went ahead and did that. 3 companies submitted their SOQs, which was A&E Consulting, Kimley Horn, and the Holtz Group. So what we did was create an evaluation committee, and A&E was the company that ranked #1. So we went ahead and contacted them. They provided a proposal, and that is what we are presenting you tonight, to award the proposal to do the design phase of the taxiway.
Thank you for the answering. I'd like to see that project, improvement project, to plan for the future of the Calexico, we can build the more bigger size of the international airport. So that way, we're gonna have a big resource of our traveling, and we can competing with the El Centro, bring the major lines supposed to be here instead of the El Centro. Our staff and our council members should be focusing on that to be able to baseline or basement of our city can grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Mr.
can stay
Kim.
there, Mr. Kim.
Stay there, just a second. Item 21 then,
Well, do we have to vote?
Oh,
we have to vote on that. Is there a motion to accept?
Motion to approve 21.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Item 22, Mr. Kim.
Thank you, sir. Again, well, I'm not trying to attacking any city staff, but at least I can see they try to be more correctly to do it instead of doing that and later on fix it. That I'm giving the credit, but I'm still think about it. That says Cesar Chavez is so much issues on us. They've been starting late, and they just open it, and they're just waiting and waiting. I don't know what they're waiting, and they could have finished earlier. But of course, the city is starting late because we had the issues with what's called the eminent domain, and we should give them more chance to give them pay more money to the residents instead of lawyer. We could do more a lot faster than now. But anyway, so we are late, but they still doing very late to finish it. And but it looks like our step to buying the time to do complete it better. Please to try to do more organized or the what's called them. They have a more organized to fix it, and then one time can finish the all things section by section, so minimizing public's inconvenience. Thank you.
Item 22 reads, authorize city manager to sign and change order number 2 with Pyramid Construction and Aggregate, Inc. in the amount of $86,769 for Cesar Chavez Boulevard improvements, federal aid project number HPLUL 5168017.
Again,
Motion to approve.
Your second?
I'd like to go.
Aye.
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 Yeah, there was 3 areas that we're going to demolish.
These were unforeseen events that happened that we can't control, so
Yeah,
we need to
this
move
is-
forward. And
this
this
is correct.
is not city funding, this is a federal match, federal grant funding.
Correct.
So we're good to go.
Union Pacific Railroad.
Moving forward.
Good? Okay.
Hey, take a break, Mr. Dale. Public hearing. Mr. Campos, how do we handle one at a time? We do A?
Oh, my.
You know, we could do the staff presentation, and then we'll open the public hearing on all the items. We'll handle all that simultaneously.
Alrighty, then we're going to
On
open
the
up.
public hearing, we'll open it up for all the items, but
All right, we're
maybe
going to
for-
open up the public hearing, and it's a little after
or if you-
8:24.
Yeah, or the first part actually would be if you want a staff report on that, we could give the staff report, and then we
Okay.
would open the public hearing after the staff report, take any comments.
Alrighty. Staff, anybody with staff?
Mr. Dale?
Come on down.
Yeah, so after the staff report, and if you have any questions after that, we can then open the public hearing for any public comments afterwards.
Mayor, council members, staff is recommending that the city council hold a scheduled public hearing, allowing input from those who are in favor or those opposed of the proposed application, which is listed above, and that is to approve the negative declaration, approving the tentative subdivision map, and also approving the general plan amendment, and then introducing and requesting to waive the first reading of the ordinance. This is approving a zone change. The city currently has a property, about 45 acres, and of that, the city is looking into creating 7 parcels, and these parcels are located west of Cesar Chavez As we all know, Cesar Chavez is the corridor to the new port of entry, and this is going to become a lucrative or very piece of land that's going to be something that many businesses are going to want to look at to utilize. So for this reason, it would make sense to parcel out these properties and utilize some of the properties to use it for the economic advantage of the city. So at this time, what staff is requesting or recommend that the city conduct a first reading of the above title only, and also to open the public hearing to get comments.
How much did we charge the city for fees and this?
Charge the city for what?
Do we charge ourselves? This is a it's kind of expensive.
I have a comment. This is not on the agenda today, but I want to really encourage not just existing council, because a few of us may or may not be leaving very soon, but city management, city staff. It's important that we keep the few assets that we have in-house. So if somebody approaches you to sell, just be very wary of that fact, because again, we're going to look good for a year. That money's going to be gone, and we lose that asset. I think I've spoken to Mr. Real in the past. Let's get some lease income on these. Recurring source of cash flow for a general fund. Let's try to be very cognizant of the fact that if we sell a city asset, it's gone. And all you're going to do is put a Band-Aid on a huge issue. So again, this is probably not for this council to even come close to approving or declining at this point, but just please keep that in mind.
I do have a question. Was this also run by the Economic Development and Finance Commission?
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission only.
But we just said economic, there was economic benefit here for the community.
So if I may address your comment, Councilwoman, if this moves forward, depending on what you decide today, this is an item to be discussed for the business development side for the city that will address a number of things, such as what Mr. Escobar is recommending that we look into.
Just the earlier that we can keep the community involved in these kinds of major
Absolutely.
types of economic changes.
But currently, all we want to do is parcel off these 45 acres into
7.
Nothing else is being done except for
that.
the parceling.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay,
We need to
hearing.
open the public hearing.
Sorry.
Any comments? We're going to open up the public hearing now for the public to address these issues. Officially opened.
Anyone wishing to comment on this item in support or opposed to?
My name is Ben Horton, Calexico. In reference, I just seen this right now. You're looking to subdivide portion of land to sell or to do what, if I can understand?
That is to be determined.
Okay, so now you're looking to subdivide something, but you don't know how you're going to utilize it. Explain that to me.
So as we know, Cesar Chavez will become a business corridor because of the nature of being the southbound artery into Mexico. There is obviously the opportunity to develop that corridor into some type of business development opportunity for the city. The specific terms as to how that is going to occur, that's something that has to be discussed at a future date, starting off at the commission level and then with some type of recommendation to city council.
Okay, in reference to subdivide, you're willing to subdivide something, but you don't know how you're going to utilize it once it's subdivided. Wouldn't you want to find something that you're going to be utilizing it for and then see if it needs to be subdivided? I'm asking a question, sir.
Business development opportunities.
Business development?
Commercial.
Commercial. So what are you looking to, when you say commercial, you're going to have commercial business on that site, or you're not on both sides. So when you say business, are we talking commercial business or light industry, or what are we talking about?
Go ahead. It's zoned railroad industrial, right? So
That's
whatever
what-
that zoning will allow.
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
industrial. You're gonna have to rezone it for commercial, because right now it's light industrial, is it not?
Excuse me, industrial, you can utilize it as commercial.
Uh,
You can go from industrial to commercial. Or
Okay, it seems like, and I'm
Mr.
not
Horan,
trying-
Mr. Horan, can I address some of your concerns? Again, the bottom line is we want to look at opportunities that are going to benefit, bottom line, the cash flow for the city of Calexico.
I realize
And that's
that.
why we're basically breaking this down, and that's why I made a comment as to future council members and future city administration be very wary of the fact that we should not enter in a buy-sell agreement because we're going to lose that asset. We should enter into some sort of lease agreement, long-term lease
concur.
agreement, to obviously augment our cash flow for our general fund.
Okay.
And I think this is a step in the right direction in order
Okay.
for us to fully develop that.
When you're talking about leasing, there's different types of lease. When you think about commercial leasing, you have net, or whatever you want to be working with. I'm asking a question.
Again, but we're not, and I apologize, it's a very simple issue here. You're asking step E, and this is step A. Can it be a ground lease? Absolutely. Can it be a triple net lease on a potentially prefabricated or spec building? Maybe. It just depends on what the
Councilman.
future opportunities give the city of Calexico, and that we obviously jump on those opportunities. But if we have one parcel versus 7, obviously we can't jump on that opportunity.
I realize that, and sometimes, and this is my feeling, sometimes you might want to see what the need and best use of the property is. And that's something that has to do with real estate. Need and best use of the property. You're saying the best use of the property is to subdivide it. That's the best use of the property. And what is the need for that? I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just thinking in reference to real estate and trying to get the best use for what you have to work with. Now, if you figure subdividing is the best use for the need, but there's no need yet. Is there? You have not developed a need? You don't have any? Do we have developers that are looking at it? Yes or no?
There are a number of parties that have reached out to us expressing interest.
Okay, and that interest, have they showed an interest they needed it to be subdivided?
We've been very careful in not jumping the steps that we haven't taken yet. At this point, like Mr. Escobar mentioned, I think we're gonna take step A first,
And
as soon as
subdivide it?
and as soon as that happens, we'll be able to move forward with the following.
Okay, and so I'm going to end with this. So you're going to subdivide it. The investor comes in and said, no, I need more than what you have subdivided. So that means you have to attach the property in order to make it work. Yes or no?
Can I just interrupt? I just want to remind people, this is public comment. You can comment on the project. It's
Well,
not.
I'm just saying,
and-
maybe we're getting a little too technical here.
Yeah, and obviously those comments are comments the city will take into consideration. If you have any others, you're willing to give them. And it's not necessarily a back and forth, but any comments obviously are appreciated to ensure
Well,
that.
I'm going to end with that. So the best use of the property for the need that it's being developed for. And that's something that you learn if you're taking your, I would say, your principal class in real estate.
Hello. I think I'm the one that made the motion already, but
I think we still have the public hearing
We
still
still-
open.
oh, sorry, public hearing.
Correct.
Mr. Kim?
Looks like this one is Rodriguez Park, which is the Little League Parks involved. And first of all, council members should not cancel this park unless they bring their kids play the baseball with another playground. That's very important. And also, what I'm understanding, this council doesn't know, or staff doesn't know what they could be purpose. They're just making the division try to sell to someone, some cashed out. And any activities, especially with the park involved, when we sell, we should that relocate money with the relocation of the place, not the general funds or something else. We should not sell that one in that way. If we sell, we have to go to the bidding process. And also, I strongly recommend this council to postpone this one with a new council member. Plus, we need to know exactly what we're gonna do that one, the people with subdivision on those lands. And same time, our kids playing the ground. Don't dismantle our kids' playing ground. Thank you.
Any other speakers for the public hearing? So we're going to close the public hearing now. Mr. Campos, we're going to take item A, B, C, and D, all in one motion.
We could take all the.
Do I
items in one
read
motion.
each one, or Mr. Real?
I want to congratulate staff. I think I know what I think I understand what Mr. Ben Horton is saying, and having been in appraiser for several years, what you mean is a highest and best use analysis of what the land should be used for. But let me also say that, just to give an example, again, and I want to congratulate staff for being proactive on this side. And yeah, you're right. We don't know if these 7 parcels that if someone's going to come in and say, you know what, no, I want 4 of them. And again, it's the city's land. The city can probably subdivide it 50 times if it wanted to, or move it around however they wanted to, build to suit. But with that said, it's like waiting for a developer to come to the city and say, hey, this is something that I pushed a while back, done, which is, for example, why do we have to wait for a developer to come for us to then have to move forward and to make a mixed-use ordinance? Why not be proactive and get that mixed-use ordinance done? That when that developer comes in, guess what? We're ready to go. And I think that's what they're trying to do. I commend them for doing that. Just like the mixed use downtown, it's ready to go. As soon as somebody comes in, boom, we're there. Again, I think that's where we need to understand that might this change in the future, depending on when tenant could come in, of course. But I think it's being done, like I said, proactively, and I think that's the important thing to understand. So.
If I might add, this has been about 8 months in the process.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And, yeah. So and again, if the lots aren't exact, we had to try to make our best guess on what the lot size would be, but lot line adjustments are easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tentative maps are not easy. Parcel maps are not easy. So lot line, we can adjust lot lines.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to read item 23, public hearing UA 2018-12. Calexico Water Plant Tentative Subdivision Map to consider A, adoption of resolution approving negative declaration of number 2018-03 prepared in accordance with California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA guidelines, and B, adoption of resolution number approving tentative subdivision map numbers 058 400-007 and 058-400-600 in order to subdivide approximately 45 acres to create 7 parcels ranging in size from 0.48 acres to 40 acres. C, adoption of resolution number approving general plan amendment number 2018-01. And D, introduce and waive full reading of ordinance number approving zone change number 2018-01. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Mayor, if you allow me to read the ordinance title into the record, Ordinance City Council, City of Calexico, California, approving zone change number 2018-01 to change the zoning classification from approximately 5 acres within the larger 45-acre site from OS Open Space to IR Industrial Rail. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Future agenda items, anybody have anything that's burning? Comment?
Very similar to what we just saw as far as being proactive. And I've tried to make it a point for a while to kind of, it's fallen through the cracks because I know it's maybe not the most important thing that we could put on an agenda. Seeing how from my 4 years here, the first 2 were extremely tough, but there was a state at a state level was passed, and I don't know the exact how the way the law reads, but I know very similar to the accessory dwelling units that were approved through the whole state. There was something that has to do with food vending, I believe. I believe now food carts and stuff like that at a state level are now allowed, or I guess cities or municipalities are not allowed to stop them or somehow. And seeing how we're being so proactive, maybe this is something we should start looking into and getting an ordinance going so that we could hopefully have more food options. I know that I'm up to here for Jack and Denny's and Applebee's. So I would love to get a good food cart going where we can go and get some tacos or something. But just something to, I guess, be proactive. It's already at a state level. Let's look at it and see if we can go from there. So
Yeah, and council member, we're aware of that. Working with Ralph, we have a model ordinance. So we're just about finding.
Oh yeah, Ralph loves these
we're aware of that issue, correct.
carts, hot dog carts, right? Okay.
Mr. Hart, Mr. Escobar, any items? Okay, let's go home. Thank you.